Hello everyone, my name is Haley Swanson and I did my portfolio on conflict resolution practices within the law enforcement relationship. So my detailed question, how can NCRP best practices resolve conflicts within police department employees' romantic relationships? So these relationships, the research shows almost an upwards of 75% is the divorce rate. So I want to know why. Why is this a big deal? Why is this divorce rate so high? And including these relationships not just with police officers, but all law enforcement employees, so detectives and crime scene technicians. And even though the research is primarily geared towards just police officers, I wanted to kind of include everyone who works in law enforcement. Why is this question important to me? It's important to me because my significant other and I are both police officers. We're getting married this year, and I want to make sure our relationship is successful. So I think this research can help provide us tools and information on how to have a successful relationship that doesn't fall into that 75% divorce rate. So to answer my research question, research first has to look at what job factors cause the stress and how that stress is leaking into the home life. The second part of the question is what NCRP practices can help this from occurring. So my methodology, I used online databases. I relied on some personal experience. I used research from prior courses, read a couple of police law enforcement books, and some of the keywords I used are at the bottom here. My literature review, I divided it up between what the spouses thought and what the police officers thought. So the spouses were mainly concerned about the safety of their officer, the weird work hours, potential personality change, and lack of communication was huge in making it difficult for the spouses to be supportive. Police officers' perspective, it can be easier at times to keep stressful incidents to themselves. There's an us versus them mentality. The physical and mental exhaustion can be overcoming at times. And another weakness is showing emotion is actually deemed a weakness within the job. The solution, the literature review offered a couple of solutions. The first one was black humor, which is a cynical version of humor. It kind of allows for the officers to joke around and kind of make light of heavy situations so that they're able to move on to the next call. Approach coping orientation, that's managing stress and emotion as it's occurring. They're able to manage it and recognize the stress and emotion as it's happening. If they can reduce it while it's occurring, that can better help the stress from leaking into the home life when they get home. Clinician ride along, this one was kind of interesting. It allows for a clinician to ride with the officer to see what kind of specific stressors affect that officer. And then finally, mediation. So my solution, I divided it up starting with prior to conflict. So before there's any conflict, what can this couple do to protect their relationships? So exercise and sleep, the research supports that heavily in all relationships just to have a better productive life and communication. Appreciative inquiry, really pay attention to what the other person's saying, not just ask the questions because you know you should, like how your day is, but really pay attention to their answers. Collaborative decision making, work together. Relationships, you guys are a team. If the couple has kids, work together on making decisions for the whole family, not just making decisions on your own and not checking with your partner. And then for the officer, trying to keep work and home separate. If conflict's already occurring, some interpersonal communication skills, including active listening, suspending judgment, and conflict, will help kind of mitigate the conflict as it's occurring. Allow time for the officer to decompress, allow them the opportunity to share when they're ready. So they might not want to have a difficult conversation right when they get home. They might need some time to decompress and kind of get everything in check before they're ready for a heavy conversation. And then finally, know the difference between interests and positions. Know any kind of feelings and emotions behind their words and not just listen to what they're saying, but what they're really feeling. If the conflict seems like it's past the point of saving, don't be afraid of mediation. So the officer should not be afraid. Educate and try to reduce that stigma that's associated to therapy. It's a sign of strength that a law enforcement officer is willing to be open to ideas, listen to another, and truly want to focus on their relationship. Finally, the limitations: police officers can be very stubborn, working through the stigma associated with therapy. I noticed there's a lack of education, so trying to get that couple education prior to entering law enforcement on what to expect, what not to expect, and the communication and conflict resolution skills they can use. So that's just a brief synopsis of my report, and I hope you enjoyed my portfolio on conflict resolution practices within law enforcement relationships. Thank you.